This video contains spoilers for the entirety of Loki Season 1, as well as potential spoilers for future MCU projects if our theories become a little too accurate. So in Loki Episode 6, we are introduced to the person who is behind the TVA, He Who Remains, portrayed by Jonathan Majors. This character is exciting because he is a variant of one of the most famous Marvel villains from the comics, Kang the Conqueror, who is set to replace Thanos as the antagonist of the MCU going forward. So in this episode, we will talk about how Loki with Kang the Conqueror sets up potential two lines in the MCU, and how that all converges into the next Infinity War / Endgame level event, as well as how this show actually sets up What If, which is something that we've been talking about ever since Loki Episode 1. So please strap in and welcome back to another episode of So to first start off our discussion, I want to talk about how Kang the Conqueror as a character is going to be relevant to future MCU projects. So one thing that I'm thinking that the MCU is doing, and I think they've been dropping hints of that, is instead of seeing one line that's going to sort of converge into something huge like Infinity War or Endgame, I think we're going to see two lines given how large the MCU has expanded at this point. I think one of the lines is going to be the multiverse / cosmic storyline that we're seeing with Captain Marvel, with Doctor Strange. Another line that we're going to see is going to be the Earth line, where we saw the new Captain America and the potential Young Avengers that they're going to set up. So first, we're going to talk about the multiverse line because that's the one most directly related to Loki.
I just want to start off by saying I think it's really smart of Marvel Studios to play Kang the Conqueror the way that they have so far. I think introducing him as a sort of prime level variant of Kang is great for Jonathan Majors specifically, just because it's such a meaty role. He essentially has the opportunity to play an infinite amount of people who all behave slightly differently. And given the caliber of actor that he is, I have full confidence that every time we see him, it will be absolutely amazing. So I think it was really smart of Marvel to set themselves in a situation where like you have a character who is inherently multifaceted. Like you can't say Kang is static.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the Kang the Conqueror in a future film. And I think that's going to be really jarring for audiences that meet Jonathan Majors, version of He Who Remains in Loki and kind of think, okay, if they're not familiar, especially if they're not familiar with the comics, they kind of think this is an interesting character. This is a sort of benevolent character. And I suspect when we get Jonathan Majors as the worst of the Kangs, it's going to be a really epic performance, and it's going to be frightening. So I'm eager to see this range on full display in the coming films.
Now, looking at Kang and the multiverse storyline, the more cosmic and fantastical MCU storyline, we know that Kang the Conqueror, at least Marvel was saying the real Kang, that evil variant, is going to pop up in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. So what kind of role would Jonathan Majors play or Kang play in that movie? And will Kang appear in more surprise projects before Ant-Man and the Wasp, which comes out in 2023?
So my guess is that we're going to see Kang showing up in Marvel properties, but in a more significant way than Thanos did when he sort of made all of his appearances in mid and end credit scenes in the sort of lead up to the Infinity War. I think we're going to get him as a significant character in a lot of these upcoming films. They're all deal with issues of, the multiverse. And I think they're kind of telegraphing that by making him a really significant character, giving him basically an entire episode, 1/6 of the Loki series. Which was a surprise for me. If they had ended with, not quite the big bad, not quite Kang, that wouldn't have necessarily been out of step with what they've done in the other two series. But here they're giving away this huge plot point. They're setting the stage for the entirety of the rest of Phase 4. I think they're going to try something new. I think they're going to try making him a major character in Ant-Man and the Wasp, in Spider-Man No Way Home, in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And like you said, Harry, maybe even in What If, too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think he's going to have a much more substantial role in different Marvel projects than Thanos did in his little cameos in the beginning of Phases 2 and Phases 3. But I think it raises sort of an interesting question to consider whether Kang whether the Eternals have an awareness of Kang. Because I know so far, based on a lot of the trailers for Eternals, we've seen that the movie takes place largely in the past and present, and we get to see the role they've played in humanity's lives. But given that we don't precisely know the role that they're playing in regards to the larger MCU, it's curious to consider whether Kang's going to make an appearance or have any effect on the events of that film.
I'm so glad Olivia has brought up this question, because one of the things I've been seeing on the internet is that in the trailers, they said we have never interfered until now. Everybody thought that now meant the snap and Thanos, because we know that this movie happens after Endgame. But what if it's Kang and He Who Remains and Sylvie opening up the multiverse at the end of Loki? I'm thinking because the Eternals are such obscure characters in the comics, Kevin Feige can really change them to fit his storyline while remaining faithful to characters. We know one thing that the Eternals was that they're gods and the Deviants are devils in different civilizations in the comics. What if the Eternals and the Deviants are multiversal characters, that they can travel across multiverses? And that is why they're kind of like Kang the Conqueror a little bit in the comics, that in different civilizations, people treat them as gods. So that it kind of ties up with the Kang storyline. So the leader of the Deviants, Crow, or whichever villain we're going to see in Eternals, is actually working with Kang. And that can set up Kang as playing a more significant role in events of different movies, larger than Thanos, because a lot of people have rumored that Shamberger is going to show up as a villain in Multiverse of Madness. Maybe Kang can behind that too, which, just like how He Who Remains is working with Goliath in Loki, Kang can work with multiple multiversal villains to establish his kingdom as sort of Kang the Conqueror in the MCU.
I want to buy that, Harry, but I'll be surprised if they bring Kang into Eternal. That's one where I haven't really seen a clear Kang connection. So if I were going to lock in a prediction now, that and Shang-Chi, I haven't yet really thought through how we're going to see a clear Kang tie-in there, given what we know about the heroes and the villains so far. But if there's anybody I trust to sort of, predict the future of the MCU, it's probably you. So you've got some foresight I don't have. But yeah, I'm not yet sold on the idea that we're going to see big Kang appearances in the films that aren't currently being marketed as multiverse films.
Shifting our gears a little bit to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I think it's established that with the quantum realm, there's time travel abilities going on. And I think that Ant-Man and the Wasp will go deeper into this whole MCU lore of time travel, how that relates to the multiverse. One of the theories I've been seeing on the internet is that the TVA, because we never find out where exactly this TVA headquarters is located, maybe is located in Chronopolis, which is a city that we saw briefly in Ant-Man and Wasp.
That's exactly my prediction, Harry. So I think that Chronopolis, it might not be Chronopolis at all. It might really just be that's Kang's little enclosure where he's built the TVA.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they're going to use Ant-Man and the Wasp as sort of a launching point for them to explore sort of the different realms that the different variants of Kang have stakes in. Because, I mean, Kang, He Who Remains describes the variant versions of himself as voracious conquerors. So it's definitely a good approach to take for us to see every single different angle for how he could make a power play for some part of the universe.
It occurs to me too, he ultimately bested all the other Kangs. And how did he do that? Well, one way to do that might be to hide his base of operations by making it really, really small. So we could say this, the TVA all works just on 30th century technology, but the key was he figured that if I shrink it down, it's going to be really hard. The other Kangs are never going to find me. Maybe that'll be a plot point in Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 is, that we'll find out that what we thought was Chronopolis was really He Who Remains setting up a hidden base, and that's going to get found out somehow.
I do think one thing they can do for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and that's why I like the whole theory that they're going to visit Chronopolis, which is the headquarters of TVA, is we can potentially get a movie appearance of Mobius, who will fit perfectly with the Ant-Man cast, with Scott Lang, Paul Rudd, and Owen Wilson. They would just be perfect in the movie. The next episode, we will shift gears to Earth and talk about how Kang the Conqueror will set up the Earth storyline, the Young Avengers, and the Thunderbolts / the Dark Avengers. In the meantime, you can like and subscribe to support our channel. You can also comment down below into what you think will happen with Kang and the rest of the MCU. That's all for today, and we'll see you in another episode of Different Theories.